Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining. I see folks from all across the country, so I'm really excited that you're all able to be with us today. Before we begin, I would like to recognize the long history of First Nations and Métis people in Canada. And today I'm connecting with you from Southern Ontario. I'm extremely fortunate to live and work in the traditional territories of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Huron-Wendat nations. And I'd like to pay my respects to the Six Nations of the Grand River Territory and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation who hold the treaty for these amazing lands that I get to work and play in. My name is Jen. I'm the chair of Interpretation Canada, and I'm really excited and happy and blessed to work with an amazing team of volunteers and board members who are working on wonderful things this year and wonderful partnerships, new partnerships as well. So I'm really pleased today to be joined by Jade, who is with the Outdoor Learning Store. And give me, Jade, I forgot to pull up what it was I needed to say.
I can intro myself if you want.
Yeah, we might need to do that.
Scooch on in.
But Jade reached out and offered to do this wonderful session with us today, and I'm really excited to hear what she has to share with us. But I was going to introduce her, but didn't find my notes. Yeah, if you guys have any questions at all throughout the session, please feel free to use the chat and or raise your hand, and I'll throw it over to Jade. Thank you.
Hello. Hi, Jennifer. I know how it is. Normally as well, I host these for other people, the authors and contributors to resources in the Outdoor Learning Store, and having multiple screens open and always trying to find the right thing. But my name's Jade Harvey-Beryl. I'm originally from the UK. But I've lived on Turtle Island since 2015. I'm coming to you from Revelstoke, BC, British Columbia, which is the traditional and unceded territories of the Snipes people, and has also been known to and utilised by the Tanaha, the Secwepemc, and the Okanagan Silts people in the Columbia River Basin. I am a physical geographer. I'm an environmental educator of 10 years, and I've spent a bit of time in the UK, France, Norway, Australia, New Zealand, and now Canada. So I've kind of had access to a few different landscapes and diverse curriculum and schools and different things, and I worked as an interpretive guide for the national park system in Australia and New Zealand. And yes, I'm sure I have lots to learn from the Canadian counterparts, because what you guys do is amazing. But I'm here to talk tools and resources. One of the first things I wanted to do, though, is just to get us here in the moment. So I'm just going to share some audio with you. So we can go take a walk in the forest. And with me, I have my magic basket. Normally I just have a screensaver on so nobody can see my untidy office, but it looks okay, I think, today. And in my magic basket, I thought we might read one of these strong stories, and they have a bundle of these in the Outdoor Learning Store. They come from Strong Nations, which is an Indigenous owned publishing house on Vancouver Island. And this is just a very short version. So, the Thanksgiving address. So this is from the Haudenosaunee people. It's a short version, and it can be used to begin important meetings or gatherings in the longhouse. And for me, anytime that I get to connect with other passionate people who care about being outside in nature or sharing information or interpretation, this feels important to me. So thank you for being here with me today. And we give thanks for our mother, the earth. What I normally do is have kids hold different things, and then they get to play their part and sort of stand up. Thank you for gifting us all that we need to live. We give thanks to the water, background. Thank you to the streams, rivers, oceans, and rains, gifting us fresh water to drink. We give thanks for all the fish. Thank you for all the food and nutrients and for keeping the waters clean. We give thanks to all the sacred plants, above all sage, cedar, sweetgrass, and tobacco. Thank you for helping us to feel better. And I honour our local First Nations with this hand-grown tobacco that I offer to the ancestors. It was grown here by local Indigenous man. We give thanks to all the insects. Thank you for your hard work and dedication to keeping the earth healthy. We give thanks to all the food plants, especially corn, beans, and squash. Thank you for gifting yummy things to eat. We give thanks to all the fruit plants, above all the strawberry. Thank you for representing the unity of our Six Nations. If the time's right, seasonally, I will bring some of these in as well. We give thanks to all the trees, above all the maple. Thank you for gifting sweet sap in the spring. I normally get everyone to stand up and bring up all the sap up from their roots where it's been hiding over winter and push it up out. We give thanks to all the animals. Thank you for gifting us food and clothing and teaching us many important lessons. And I have squirrel, Niku bear, Mo the moose, eagle. Oh, eagle's next. We give thanks to the birds. Thank you for sharing beautiful songs throughout the season. We give thanks to the wind. Thank you for blowing and keeping us cool in the summer. We give thanks to Grandmother Moon and the stars. Thank you for the light at night time. We give thanks to our elder brother, the sun. Thank you for the light that helps things grow and for keeping us warm. And we offer our thanks and greetings to the Creator. And in this beautiful place of Turtle Island that I am learning about and feel very grateful and honoured to spend time. Every time I go out into nature, I learn something more. So I'm extremely, extremely grateful for being here. On we shall go. But I find a welcome outside like that with the kids or whoever I'm with is an amazing way. And it's amazing. I've even done this with adults, how quickly they switch off that sort of embarrassed part of their brain and just get on with it, enjoying it. Okay, I'm going to actually start my PowerPoint now. So this is learning tools and resources. Is it in French too, Julie? No, they are not. But there are some beautiful Métis resources that we've just added to the store in a bundle that have French. So you should have a check this out. It's just launched in the spring and they're, we're really expanding into that French. So this is me. I spend a lot of time outdoors with students from K to 12 and even early years, taking them out on adventures and doing some form of interpretation. As I said, I'm sort of about third, I'm not sure if you can see my mouse, but the first red line of the river, we're down in Revelstoke. This is the home of the sturgeon canoe. For the Snipes people, this is the land of the bull trout. For the Tanaha people, it's the land of the Mishkakis, the chickadee, and they call the Columbia River the Chickadee River. And I've been having a lot of fun delving into chickadee things this winter with my students. I'm very fortunate where we live. This is, 5 minutes from the back of the school, and we're out here on the beach, and interpretation is for different plants and animals, the biodiversity is huge. We were just here about to start thinking about weather. So actually we built mouse houses on the sandy beach, and I came at them with a big cardboard flapping and a watering can of water from the river, and tried to destroy their mouse houses. And we talked about what it would be, you know, to build a home and as an animal, and how you could adapt to extreme weather. Where would be the best place to build? Maybe sheltered on this bank over here. Part of what I do with the lilies, especially, and I'm wearing flowers in my hair because it feels like the first day of spring, is to dress up. So this is a Nature Through the Seasons program, and this is our birch tree, and we come back 4 times a year and look at the changes to the forest floor and the bark and the leaves and see what's going on, and really get to know this tree really well. And I am the spring sprite, I believe, here from the colours. In a minute, you'll see me in my winter witch mode, or Mrs. Snowflake, as some of them like to call me. But I think one of the biggest things for exploring nature is just getting them out there, whatever the weather, and knowing that there is always something that can be done. So I teach, I'm also an outdoor guide, I'm a rock climbing instructor and apprentice hiking guide, and I have spent some times in some very sort of extreme, more dangerous situations, doing things I maybe missed like this, mountaineering, taking youth out with our Alpine Club of Canada groups, and this was like a 18-kilometer hike to get here. That's Begbie Glacier up there, that little patch of snow, and it was a 3-day trip, and I've spent a lot of time in more extreme environments. And I think one of the biggest things is that exploring nature doesn't have to be this big scary rock face. It could be just at the edge of that golf course down there, or just at the edge of your playground or backyard. Nature and exploring can go on different scales, and one of the things I love to work with is scale. So if you don't have this, I don't even have this. This is in Banff. This is a 5-hour drive away. I was here learning with these people. Is that, you know, on something like we find in the walking curriculum or in the Big Book of Nature activities, you can do a 5-meter field trip where you're getting down low and looking at the boundary level and looking in a crack. I like to shoot my children with a ray gun and shrink them to ants, and then ask them to build a nature park, or what do they think the landscape in front of them would feel like if they were an ant. And there's always scaling, and there's always an ability to change. I mean, I'm preaching to the choir here for sure, but converging evidence strongly suggests that experiences of nature boost academic learning, personal development, and environmental stewardship. Every time we go out there and experience nature, whatever we're doing, we are stewarding our earth and moving forward. And it's hoping to tap into that Indigenous ways of knowing, of looking 7 generations and thinking about the future. So that makes me really happy to know. And like I said, not everybody's got access to big mountains and rivers, for example, and we're just getting one made up for the store at the moment with these tarps that are ethically produced and very high quality materials, is that you can take this tarp and put that over a playground, and it doesn't matter where you are, you're in a colourful, magical wonderland. Here we were exploring the Subnivean zone, and looking at the way that animals burrow and adapt in the winter. And you can just have the best time. Diversity is not a thing where I am, apparently. Where I grew up in East London, it was an extremely diverse cultural and societal place, and where I live is less so. And I think it's really important to engage in other resources from different perspectives, and there's some really amazing ones coming up, and that's what we're working on with the store, is really sort of diverse point of view, and especially uplifting Indigenous voices in Canada, which we feel has not been a thing. And whenever we work or play or learn on the land, then that is information that should be central and can't be put as a secondary. So that's a huge thing that we're doing to focus on. Another thing I love about this photo is just that this was a found object. We found this this is just on the field, and there were some trees behind the school, and this was found. And so we took some time to investigate it. What did it feel like? What was inside it? Who do we think made it? What do we think happened to the eggs? Were there any eggs? And it was quite interesting because there were a couple of pieces of like plastic sort of tinsel type material inside that nest. And so we then got onto a whole thing about objects in nature and are all things natural? And then I was with these students all day. So because I'd found this, I got inspired, and I got them to make nests out of the long grass and other found materials. We all obviously always have a conversation about responsible harvest and making sure that we don't take living things off of trees and all of that kind of jazz. But I had them over a break. So I nipped to a local store and bought a bunch of these little mini eggs, and then I went and hid them in the baskets during break when the kids were playing, and then they came back to find eggs in their baskets, and we did a whole skit, like drama thing about birds, eggs, looking after eggs, and then they got to eat the chocolate eggs, which they were quite pleased about. I obviously asked if anyone had allergies or food things before we went. Do we have any book titles for diverse points of view, Peter? Absolutely. I have a bit more of a sort of real resources list, images bit later on, and I will share it then. Thanks for chatting. Okay, so adapting, whatever you find, use that for the day, and then let that inquiry-led sort of adventure go where it should, or where it might. And then inclusion is a massive thing with environmental education. This is Karen Lai in the centre there in blue. She is a diversity, equity, inclusion, I want to say manager is not the word. She runs that for Vancouver City, and she also runs workshops, and we were doing a workshop here. And so what, like wilderness or nature might not be accessible for everybody. So we are in the sort of green park space directly behind the school where we were having our workshop. And rather than going out and building a fire, we were in a park, but it was freezing and we wanted something. So gas fire is apparently acceptable. I did ask the city. And looking at accessibility, flat routes, you might have to change your adventure to suit. I work also with children and young adults with physical and cognitive disabilities in the sort of sports world. We run skiing programs for them here with a charity, and slippery upslopes and things, getting to the actual activity. Once you're on the skis or whatever, it all makes sense, but it's the transitions that are difficult. So I'm always trying to think about that when I plan whatever it is that I'm doing. And so this is a sort of, we call it an artificial wetland, but this is the Arrow Lakes Reservoir. It's created by the Hugh Keenleyside and Revelstoke dams in the late 80s, and it created this drawdown zone, this reservoir. And we're here doing some water quality testing and looking at macroinvertebrates and bugs. And my gosh, do they love that. And that's one of the biggest things that I love to do with kids, is to turn them into scientists and to have them lead the way in where they think. And do you think that taking samples from this big left open side might be different from in this very shallow channel? Where do you think the best place to be would be to find these bugs? And, everybody likes to hide. So, in amongst that vegetation, and with some of the resources we have and that I've used and learnt from, you don't have to be, a bug expert to make it, because there are excellent field guides that do that for you. So when we go exploring, I'm here with a bunch of much older kids, and part of the exploration was for them to tell me what had happened here. So there's this sort of quite regular sort of shaped pool on the right, and you can see lots of foliage, lots of trees around, and then they're standing on this very sort of exposed bank. And it turns out that off screen right here, there is a culvert that drains a mountain, and the local council wanted this breeding area for fish to be better. So they thought, okay, I know what we'll do is we'll remove all the natural vegetation, all the shade. We'll dig this really deep exposed pool, and then that'll be great. The fish will love that. And that was not the case. And now they only come right deep in this dark hidden section here. And what they also did when they changed this area was not dig the slope on a steep enough angle so that all of the sediment running off of this culvert started to infill. And now they have to dredge the culvert every 6 months. And I think so one of the biggest things when I'm out in nature, and in Gillian Judson's The Walking Curriculum, she talks about lovely and unlovely. There's a lovely and an unlovely walk. And you look at the things like, what are the things that you think are lovely and unlovely? And how would you feel if one of those were removed, or if it was all the lovely things or all the unlovely things? And would that be good for you and every other aspect of this ecosystem? Who else is in this ecosystem? And with these older students, we did some like water testing, some quite good data collection actually, and submitted a lot of that data through water rangers into their online database, just asking questions about that environment and what makes it natural and what isn't, is a really big thing. They were quite perturbed. These were the grade 9 kids who didn't want to get off their phones, who were very disinterested in anything I had to say. As soon as we started talking about this, and they were like, well, why would they do that? And it's like, well, some of you will probably go on to careers, and I think connecting as well some of these older students with potential decision-making roles. Anyway, I found that quite inspiring that that they got in that way. And then with, you know, being out here, a massive thing that I do is tell stories. And I'm a big fan of reading and taking literacy outside, and taking turns. Actually, on this day, we went in and we collected stones from this beach, and then we went and I get them to paint whatever they want. They can paint a stone a color, they can paint an item on it. And then I start a story once they've dried. Like the day before we went and collected the stones, went in, and then we came out here and told stone stories. So I start off with something, you know, once upon a time, and I pick up there's a cat or something. Sometimes you have to be a little interpretive of the artists, of what they have created. And then you're like, oh, is that a pizza slice? And he's like, no, obviously it's a melon. And like, oh, of course, my poor eyes, they're blind. Or asking the kids, you just interpret whatever it is, and we put all the stories and we go around the circle, and if there's ever a break or a pause, you know, you slide in, and we end up with these magical adventures of cats going through forests and finding hidden pools full of gems and taking a potion and getting 3 wishes, and then the next kid gets to do 3 wishes. I'm also a massive fan of having any kind of fire with kids. I think we're lucky we're allowed to do that there. I've got another picture where we're not allowed to do that, and I've got these pie dishes. I just recycle pie dishes, and you can ask your local Facebook group or whatever, and then we do a 5-minute fire. So, and they're only this big, so they don't count legally. So anything like that. I'd also here made what I learned in Norwegian, or they call it snøbrød, snow bread. It's kind of like a bannock, but it's just a very basic bread dough that you can make the day before. I let it rise, and then I get the kids to get sticks, and you can use a vegetable peeler, works really well to scrub sticks, or knives if you trust them. I don't trust this group. I have another group that I do trust to do proper knife skills. And then you take a piece of bread about a golf ball size, and you rub it and make a sausage, and then you wrap the sausage around the stick, and then it cooks over the fire. And then I mean, during COVID we didn't do it this way, but I normally just have a jar of Nutella, and you just pass it around, and they just dunk their snøbrød into the Nutella jar. Obviously nut allergies is a big thing as well. You can do peanut butter, or it tastes just amazing just as it is, jam, whatever. But I found that stories, they get very, they don't tend to focus on, oh, I've got to public speak, or oh, I've got to do it. Obviously, I never force anyone, but often I've never done story stones or a storytelling situation where the kid who didn't want to speak after 3 or 4 rounds going around didn't actually say, oh, okay, I'll have a turn. And so that level of inclusivity, that level of empowerment for me is just incredible. And I'm seeing older kids and they do not know how to public speak. They do not know how to stand in front of a room of people and share. And so this kind of informal speaking practice is so important for me. And we'd also, G on the right here in blue had just made us hot chocolate on the beach with my camp stove, which was just glorious. And they all have sit pads, which is like kids, yeah, they're not all wearing snow pants because it was actually end of spring, starting to get a bit warmer, or end of winter, I should say. Sit pads are a dream. Okay, here you'll start to see me dressed as a winter witch, and we're doing some real interpretation with guess the pelt. And so I send pelts out, and these were collected from hunters or from various places, and obviously make sure to tell them that I did not like murder the animals in order to receive them, but then I just laminated pictures of different animals and we guess. And I found that, again, kids with sensory issues sometimes, and touching furs, touching dead things, there's a lot of things attached with that. And this has been a really good way for me to connect with some of these students to get over some of those problems, or fears, I should say. And this goes down incredibly well when it's hidden in a big sack. And then as soon as we use my tarp as a blanket, and there's a lot of kids, I do this one or this one, and caribou and elk are quite similar. So there's lots of fun. Here I am, I believe I'm, Mrs. Snowflake, and we're getting the kids to, I've got these laminated sheets, I think, from Mr. Bentley's Snowflake, that are about all the different types of snowflakes you can have. If it's freshly snowing, magnifying glass, black bin liner, looking at snow crystals up close, absolute winner. Looking at them on different textures, looking at them underneath trees, does anything change there? But it hadn't snowed, and it was everything was just like sort of ice crust. So I got them to make the shapes in teams, and I pointed each time to a different type of snowflake, and they had to make it. And I really enjoyed this sort of teamwork exercise. And I got this from the Big Book of Nature activities. I just adapted it to bring my own pictures, and I really enjoyed that. And they were learning about 6-sided shapes, but they were only 4 people, so they were thinking about how they could do that. One of the other things I love to do, I'm not sure if you're going to be able to hear this, it's quite quiet, and also my voice is terrible, but I'll play it anyway.
Forms on you, and you grow extensions.
I'm playing a little drum.
Lift up and kick out your legs.
We're talking about the formation of snowflake. The dust in the sky, and then the wind picks up and they grow.
And then you start to dance and collide with the wind. And then sometimes you bump into other snowflakes. And you become pairs, link-arms.
As you can tell, I have real strong musical skills.
And when you are linked together, you become very heavy and you slowly fall to the ground. But then the wind picks up and you bounce up and spin around and fall back down. Up and spin and fall around with the wind. Then the wind dies down and you fall back to the ground. You come to rest on the snowpack waiting for the next storm to cover you up and for you to become a part of the white winter landscape.
Yes, and so like things like that, and I can share that poem if you want, whatever, but it is scientifically how a snowflake is formed. And we do that 3 or 4 times. We do it just with the words, then they do the actions, and then we did the whole thing, and they loved it and they were very into it. I've had older students, teenagers, do me a snowflake rap, and I ask them, like, someone's beatboxing or they're using natural materials to drum or whatever to create a rap about how snowflakes are formed, or the symbiotic relationship between algae and fungi that creates lichen, for example. And with adults, you can ask them to mime it or to create using objects that they've found the process of how it all works and act it out, and it works with everyone. Everyone loves it. My other greatest thing about interpretation is just making kids do it. So the first thing I do is like a rotational interpretation. So I take a group to a plant, the cedar tree, and talk about that it's, you know, you can boil the leaves. Say there's 3 in the group, you give them 3 facts. You can boil the leaves and make a tea that's got anti-inflammatory purposes. It's also a very spiritual tree. It's also used to create excellent building materials, something like that. And I teach that to the first 3. And then a new group comes. They learn those 3 facts from that group. And then I take the new group to the next tree or plant or animal whole, and I teach them 3 facts about that. And so each time a new group comes, they learn from group 1, they learn from group 2, then they become the new group, and eventually all of the groups are spread out along a trail. And then the final group comes, they learn from group 1. Group 1 goes with them and learns to group 2. And eventually every kid has learned from every other of their peers. And because it's their information and we don't have cards, they have to memorize that one fact. And I practice it with them once. Really helps if you've got a teacher keeping them busy while the groups are waiting to come. I normally have like a really simple quiz or trivia, or we play hide and seek A to Z, or where they have to find something beginning with A in the landscape, or B, and you just go around. But getting kids to take control of or anyone, whoever you're with, to take control of the learning.
3, 2, 1, action.
Nope, because spiders.
The audio is not great.
Welcoming and peace. Calming. Calming. Calm and peace. Calm and energized. Connected. Calm. Adventurous. Cool.
So I'd also asked all these students what nature meant to them. They'd been out on an adventure, and if you can look at this left hand, or sort of on the clipboard, I asked them to break their page into 4, and they went out and they sketched something hard, something soft, something interesting, and then one of the things they'd sketched close up or zoomed in, and I just sent them out, and they spent maybe about half an hour doing these things. And then I asked them to say the words of what nature meant to them, and there was lots of calming, there was some energized. One of the students at the end had found a pet slug, and normally I'm not super into picking up animals, but she's like super not a fan of being outside, and she'd like brought him a leaf so he'd had food to snack on, and slugs are quite ubiquitous. I didn't feel like it was endangered in any way, but just watching the care and affection of actually just sitting in a sit spot and drawing and journaling and connecting. And so that's one of my favorite things as well to do, is to connect. You know, you don't have to be an expert in the plants or animals that they're doing. It's just the fact that they're expressing themselves and connecting with it that matters to me. This is one of my favorites. We were out and there's all this incredible needle ice. Now I am a glaciologist, sort of, that's what I specialize in, and this is what happens when you have a huge temperature gradient overnight, and the air pressure changes, so the moisture basically gets sucked up as the ground cools rapidly overnight. And you get this a lot in spring where I am, and these vertical things. So then we spent this whole thing of like, what does it look like? It's like, oh, it's this ice city. And we built this whole drama skit around all of the animals in this crazy crystal ice city, and finding textures, finding shapes, finding anything, and just saying, tell me about it. And it doesn't have to be science, it doesn't have to be real, but engaging. And another book by Gillian Judson, I'll talk about engaging ecological education. So when they engage their imaginations, they remember it. When I give kids my puppets with a picture of an animal with 3 facts on it, and I ask them to act out the relationship between fox and mouse in winter, or how fish go into a sort of very slow, not full hibernation, but settling state where they don't search for animals, or, you know, the imagination comes out and they remember the information. There's my small fire. It somehow got stuck back here. But yes, it was a really hot, sunny day. It's not a great day that you really want to have a fire, but yes, having a 5-minute fire of where they have to collect all the different materials can be great. I will follow up with stories, poems, anything that you want, just let me know and I'll follow up in an email for you all. This was last week on spring break with some older kids here, and I don't know if any of you've seen Andy Goldsworthy's art or sculptures, but he does all these natural and ephemeral nature sculptures, and one of them is a spiral. So we talked about spirals in nature, we talked about the different shapes, the way they're built on a Fibonacci sequence. And these older kids, the rest of the group were quite young. It was a real mixed recreational group. They were so focused in size ordering. Then they're classifying things, right? They were moving it, shaking it, talking about what will fit nicely on a beautiful sunny day on a beach. We talked about the fact that there were different types of rocks. This big one right here at the bottom is a conglomerate, which is where basically rocks get smashed together and cemented together as ice moves and then retreats. And then everything else here is a lot of metamorphic granite and stuff. 200 million years ago, 2 gigantic 7-kilometer thick plates of rock got smashed together and pushed all these mountains up. And whether you live there or you live in the flatlands and talk about billion-year-old shallow seas, and the river running past you is the same water that dinosaurs were sipping out of puddles 66 million years ago. Like, a few key facts, boom, they're in, they're loving it. And the other thing is, if you are doing more of a teaching scenario, this is rock sorting. They find 4 sticks that are the length of their arm, and then I ask them they've got 2 minutes to sort the rocks within that space into a category. And you normally get size, you get shape, or color. And then I ask them to repeat, and they have to repeat and do a different type of category. I also asked them to name the different categories. I believe we had giant and mahusive, middle-sized, sediment, or tiny. And then as we went on, we started looking at texture. We looked at how texture relates to history. And then we talked about, where did these rocks come from? Did they all come from the same place? Are there any sharp rocks in here? And the fact is, this is a riverside beach in an area that has been was glaciated 10, 11,000 years ago and is now just rivers. And so most of them, there aren't really any sharp rocks around. So it was quite an interesting discussion about weathering and about landscape evolution and all of these things, just by, picking up some rocks, which I really enjoyed. Building a world. Julie might have seen this before. She's been in one of my other things. I'm a massive fan of building a world. Again, ethical harvesting, but sand, mud, moss, glass jars I got from a thrift store. Kids had to answer questions in a race to build their world, layering it here. And I used recycled bottle caps for a little pond because you have to have liquid in there. And then I go to the thrift store and find little plastic animals. So here you can see the Bengal tiger in the right-hand glass, which is very native to Revelstoke, BC. But yeah, greaseproof paper or baking paper and an elastic band. And they are self-sufficient for many years. Both of these are still going. They've been there for years on a windowsill. If it ever stops having condensation, you just put a bit more water in the pond. And then after a week, you start to see like nematodes and worms burst out, and you can just have an amazing conversation. Carmen's got to go, no worries. I will send you a link to the recording in the follow-up email. Thank you for joining. Okay. Older kids, nature journaling. We'd hiked 18Ks, their bodies were tired, but their brains were not. And I asked, they'd never stayed away overnight before. They were 13 to 18-year-olds, especially in the wilderness. And some of these kids were very nervous about their art, but I asked them, we started introducing the idea of scale, looking up, looking down. We also did some amazing wildflower drawings, which I don't have in this presentation, but we were up in the Alpines, so there was amazing species. I asked them for tracks, and we did things like that. And so, yeah, I think just anything that pays more attention has worked really well for me. Okay, tools and resources. There are an enormous more. So the Outdoor Learning Store, we are a charitable non-profit organisation, and we were created because many of us who were teaching and working as environmental educators were like, I have to import from America, or I have to use the dreaded A word, and you know, have women that are pregnant who aren't allowed toilet breaks and things. I'm not sure I'm even allowed to say that, but it's really important to us that we walk the talk. So all of our packaging is recycled. All of the things that we get are you know, highest quality, ethically produced, or produced in Canada, ideally. And some of the big things, the big books that have inspired me are the Big Book of Nature Activities, Juliet Robinson's. We have Dirty Teaching, we have Messy Maths. She's an absolute genius and has been working with curriculum-based outdoor ed for the longest time. So if you're ever trying to get anything with a sort of assessment side of things, they're great, but they're like bite-sized paragraphs of perfection, just to lead you down the garden path. Talking of gardens, we've got Casey Ray Christopher, the school garden curriculum, which is not just about building a garden in your school or wherever you are. There's just so much linked to seasonality and the way things progress in ecology and systems. And Peter, I think you were talking about various voices. So these bundles, so the books, or the book that I read, the Thanksgiving Address, and I have Big Bear. There's a whole bundle, and they're from First Nations from across Canada, so you can either just utilize yours or go there. Sealer in the Land, which was produced in conjunction with Green Learning, is like a moralistic tale. So it's written by 3 female, young female Indigenous authors. It's illustrated by a female Indigenous author, and it gives 3 different First Nations perspectives as a person. A sealer walks through the landscape, and about caring and stewardship and lessons from you know, the natural things having a soul and a spirit to share. So I'm absolutely in love with that. Any of you need a laugh or a bit of joy or a bit of silliness, Remy Robbins albums, which we just sold out of, but you can get them on Spotify, and he'll be happy for you to send there. He's an enviro songster. He has songs like What's That Habitat, Let's Get Drastic About Our Plastic. There's actions, but they're funny enough that adults love them as well. And he's just a phenomenal guy. So if you ever need like an intro song or a connection, or you want to teach what's in an ecosystem, so like food, water, shelter, and space, and you know, I can't wax lyrical about him enough. I love him to pieces. Natural Curiosity is about Indigenous perspectives in children's environmental inquiry, and it's produced. I'm interviewing Doug and Julie for our podcast actually next week, and it's all about Indigenous perspectives and inquiry-based learning, and just phenomenal ways of connecting and building a way of teaching, whether it's in a school or in a group or a guided tour, anything like that. They do just the most phenomenal work, and it's Indigenous produced. Other things that I have, so we just got a bunch of new Métis resources. I've got this under here. I've been taking notes. Medicines to help us. We've got Anne Breen's new book. She's where is she from? Anyway, she runs Brown Girl Outdoors, and she's all about, the book tells a story of immigrants coming and camping in North America and having access to the outdoors. And we're looking at every new book that we come in at sort of sharing that information. I have to show it to you. I should have pulled it out earlier, but People's Curriculum for the Earth, especially if you've got older students, this is amazing. And so this is Black, Indigenous people of colour, with amazing stories, articles, but also these amazing sort of like group activities. For example, they have an Indigenous group summit where they talk about action projects that they could do to support Indigenous people across the world. It's can be place-based, or it can add a bit more of a global perspective. And it has these incredible ways to lead you up deep into depth knowledge, and then these perfect activities for groups to do in a team building scenario, outdoors. It's pretty amazing. A lot of the stuff that I do, I love giving kids something to do, and having a sit pad, which also make great frisbees or whatever, has been really helpful for me in keeping them warmer and drier and more engaged. Dip nets, binoculars that are pretty inexpensive and help them to really focus in on what they're doing so that each walk becomes more engaging. And viewers, a clipboard with a scavenger hunt makes a huge difference. Or for me, doing journaling on recycled paper or scrap paper, and then them taking that back and building that up, whether it's every week or you're going out with different groups, it's a memento for them to keep. And we have a bunch of Canada-wide field guides that are laminated, child-proof, like weatherproof, everything-proof, and it means that anyone can be an expert. We have the pond life one that goes with the dip nets, and it's great. For older ages, okay, here are some of the books that I forgot to talk about. So Gillian Judson's Engaging Imagination in Ecological Education, like practical strategies for teaching whatever level of teaching you're doing. And I found a lot of the strategies in there for teaching adults or working with mature groups has been incredible, because it breaks down those barriers of sort of unlearning, where we sort of smush the creativity and the connection with what we're doing. Groundswell is this beautiful book, Indigenous Knowledge and a Call to Action, and there's all kinds of lessons connected to that. Learning for Sustainable Futures, Connecting the Dots, helps you to understand how you can teach about climate and sustainability anywhere, and like citizenship projects, action projects you can do with any age group, even if that's just like picking up trash or counting trash or doing like a really simple biodiversity study while you're out. The walking curriculum, every person that works outside should have it. It's this thick, it's just like 5 mil of like 50 walks of that it's like 2 sentences and the whole day is done. Like, it's incredible. We've also got teaching about invasive species, which can be an amazing way to tie into climate change, and they're everywhere. So then you can also connect to a community group like an invasive species group who could support the interpretation work you're doing, or you support their work and they are very proud that you're doing that. And if you've got Litlands, David Sobel's Place-Based Education teaches how you can build amazing programs that connect kids with curriculum outside. And then Green Teachers, Teaching Kids or Teens About Climate Change are both amazing books. And they're like games, you know, there's like the carbon dioxide game where we're in 2 concentric circles and we've got sunbeams coming in to tag the earth and escape, and then carbon dioxide molecules tag them and then they get held, and there's all different rounds. And then you have like a bag where you pull out random scenarios like you know, US and Europe bans fossil fuels and switches to electric cars, and like a lot of the carbon comes out of the atmosphere, and you can kind of see this sort of tangible understanding of the sort of greenhouse effect and how humans and anthropogenically we've changed that. And then there's like really super in-depth, long, multi-lesson activities that you can really delve into that get kids taking action. So that's pretty fun too. Night sky stuff. Where's my Big Bear book? I love this. I've been taking kids out now and into the dark and telling stories, and this talks about Big Bear and the constellation, how it changes through the seasons. And we have this night sky booklet, which is glow in the dark, so you can talk about that. I also use an app called Stellarium, which is this amazing planetarium app where you can look at your constellations inside through the computer in 3D and then go out and look for it. So when, for example, it's not Neptune, I think maybe it is, you can see that in the early morning sky, and it just tells you exactly where to look. But anyway, it can have some really nice conversations, and then there's lots of allegory linked with the star constellations as well, which is a really nice cultural historical tie. And where we are in the winter, like at 4 p.m, it's dark, so I do after school things where we go straight out and walk. We have a bunch of different water quality testing kits. This is the more complex one. There's a tiny one, which is just a thermometer, and you take pictures and you could submit that data. And anytime I take kids out on citizen science, they start to interpret the world around them as belonging to them and having some ownership, and that's been so helpful. Okay, and there are many more, and everything we do is non-profit. We share our profits with other educational non-profits like Take Me Outside, and like with 30 different partners, the Outdoor Council of Canada, and all these things. Astra asked, what age groups do you find water quality testing lessons work best with? Any of them. We have this tiny test kit, which is just taking temperature and using one of these blue and white things. It's an electroconductivity meter, and you just shove it in and it tells you about water. And we just test tap water and snow melt from the side of the road, which has a lot of salt in it, right? So you can talk about all the hidden things, microscopic things in the water. So I've done it with kindergartners, they've loved it. This kind of level where we're doing like dissolved oxygen and they have to crack vials and, you know, leave things in places for certain amounts of times. Grade 7 up, I've had phenomenal success. And then when they're uploading that data, they can go on the database of water rangers themselves and add that. So when we get to talk about physics and modeling and math, they're doing data recording, they get pads. There's just so much that's really connecting. And with adults as well, this is citizen science, it's stewardship. So if you're ever out, one of the big things they do is like a Bioblitz. Living Lakes Canada do a Bioblitz, and all you have to do is take a water temperature, which you could do, most people have got some sort of thermometer, right? You take a water temperature and a photo, and it's just sharing this sort of database of what we're looking at and what temperatures are, so we can really start to have sort of long-term weather studies and water quality studies as you go a bit deeper. But these we have the best days. And then on the side of this, I have one group doing testing, one group collecting macroinvertebrates using one of our guides, doing an ID, and it's just like the diversity that we have here. And you know, we have so many lakes in Canada or water bodies is amazing. And then maybe you only have a puddle, maybe you have a puddle or tap water, and you look at what's inside and do a comparative study. I'm going to finish with a very little quick poem. So this, I was clicking the buttons. This is an illustration by E.H. Shepherd. This is A.A. Milne's Christopher Robin and Pooh Bear and Piglets there. And the context of this, you might know this poem, but I grew up reading his poems. He has 2 books called When We Were Very Young and Now We Are 6. And my dad used to read these poems to me all the time. Christopher Robin loved to play outside in the woods. But on this particular day, it's raining really hard and he's not allowed to go outside. And the context above the poem says he's staring out the window, desperately wanting to go and play outside. I mean, nowadays, thank goodness, it's like, well, we're not made of sugar and we won't melt. So like, you know, outdoors learning all the time. but staring at the window. It's called Waiting at the Window by A.M. Milne. And it's the 2 drops that you can see just in the center. These are my 2 drops of rain waiting on the window pane. I am waiting here to see which the winning one will be. Both of them have different names. One is John and one is James. All the best and all the worst comes from which of them is first. James has just begun to ooze. He's the one I want to lose. John is waiting to begin. He's the one I want to win. James is going slowly on. Something sort of sticks to John. John is moving off at last. James is going pretty fast. John is rushing down the pane. James is going slow again. James has met a sort of smear. John is getting very near. Is he going fast enough? James has found a piece of fluff. John has hurried quickly by. James was talking to a fly. John is there and John has won. Look, I told you. Here's the sun. And I think exploring nature, big, small, young, old, urban, wilderness, whatever. Anytime you explore nature, anytime you just go outside, exploration and development happens. So yeah, I love the books. I love the stuff. I love the equipment. I love the resources, but I'm just grateful anytime I get to go outside. And I think anyone that you go with will be too. Thank you for listening. We can have a chat if you like. Oh, I have prizes, so don't leave yet.
I also had a reminder for folks.
Yay, thanks. I do tend to ramble, and obviously, as you can tell, I love what I do. But I wonder if anyone would share either in the chat or by unmuting, like what kind of interpretation work you do or what age groups you work with. I normally do a poll, but I forgot. What age students or...
Maybe while folks are answering that question in the chat, I did want to remind folks that if you're an Interpretation Canada member, you do have a discount, a 5% discount at the Outdoor Learning Store that is available until March 31st. So you still have a few more days if you want to order any of those wonderful resources that are available in the store that Jade shared with us. And that the discount code is available in your last IC news. And if you don't remember what it is, feel free to send me an email and I can add my email in the chat.
Amazing. So grade 5, 6s, that's great. And I feel like yeah, each age group has a different thing. Obviously, the super young ones are like really keen to do whatever I ask of them, but they don't potentially have the confidence or complexity to think up, you know, characters for their animals yet or whatever. Or then I get to grade 5, 6 and yeah, you know, some of them are getting shy about sharing or participating in things. A resource teacher, okay, K to 12. So that's, I mean, sorry, I actually don't know exactly what that is, Peter. Is that like a learning support?
Yeah, if you don't mind me unmuting my mic.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's for just a resource teacher for teachers in the board, as I said, from K to 12. My focus is healthy active living, which is our phys ed curriculum, but also included in that is outdoor education, sustainability.
Fantastic. Well, in support of that, of course, we always want to give back to our community. So we have our spring workshops, which will feature a lot of the authors. David Sobel's in there, Megan Zenny, who's Room to Play. She's a teacher at UBC and in education and all these things. So they start in April, and I can put the link in the chat and in the follow-up email, as there's some more professional development workshops happening there. But yes, I also, part of the work, our main partner is Take Me Outside, and they have an enormous number of free resources that are especially linked to physical education as well. And that moving around, you know, even between activities, I make the kids do animal walks and just, you know, tire them out basically. And I think that anytime they're outdoor learning, they're definitely burning more calories. So I support it. Jen says she works mostly with adults and do historical interpretation. Nice. We're looking to revise our school programs and include more nature. So that's timely. Amazing. And I think for me, like historically, I'm geology based. So I think lots back to the rocks rather than the humans. But there are like in the big book of nature activities, for example, it's North America wide, but they have chapters based on like Pacific Northwest or Eastern, and they connect with the sort of human history of our places as well. So it's quite interesting to connect. Okay, I'm going to give away two $25 gift cards to the store, and I wondered if you might provide me with a typing response as a sort of competition. I'll get there in just 1 second. Steph says preschool, kindergarten. She just got a 2A nature viewer, and I wasn't sure if it'd be much different than a magnifying glass, but it's a great way for kids to get close to things they might be hesitant to touch, and we're slowly getting comfortable. Absolutely, that's amazing that they get to look close, but not actually have to touch it with their hands. So I highly recommend. They work really well for that. Okay, typing fingers at the ready. I wonder if you might, it's spring, so I'm going to have S words. I'm going to ask you to type 3 S words, don't hit enter between them, that connect you or make you feel about nature and learning outside. So 3 S words, the first 2 people to give me 3 S words that are connected to nature, not including spring, will get a $25 gift card. Peter. Snowdrops, stars and sunshine, sun, soil and sand. Thank you, Peter and Julie. I'm going to write you down, but I get your emails from the our registration list. Singing snowdrops and snacks. Lovely, Asta. And the snowdrops, I think, are coming out soon. Crocuses are poking their heads through. I will send you both the $25 gift card to the store, so you might get a book on there for that, or a couple of nets, or a field guide or 2. So thank you so much for participating. I'm sorry I'm over time, Jennifer.
Thank you so much, Jade, for sharing your enthusiasm and passion and resources. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much, everyone, for tuning in, and we look forward to seeing you at our upcoming ventures. So Interpretation Canada is working on planning our national conference in October this year in Halifax, so check that information out. And we're also working on a webinar coming up in May for the Global Alliance for Heritage Interpretation, their global webinar series. So we're really excited for that as well. I'm just excited today. I'm saying that word a lot.
Am I muted? No, I've just put in a link to the outdoor learning store. There's also workshops thing. All of our workshops are free. You can click on there. We also have a podcast, where we interview the writers of these books, and some of them have been quite interesting in their sort of motivations and interests. And I'm really grateful for the opportunity to speak with you today. And again, I'll send a follow-up email, and if you ever want to chat, you'll have my personal email through that, so we can connect.
Merci.
Merci à vous, Julie.
Bye bye.
Oui, à la prochaine. Thanks, everyone.